My name is Thomas Houseago, and I'm a sculptor. And I'm here to see his work at the Biennale, and I'm doing a show in Rome.
I'm Enrico David. I'm an Italian artist. I live in London. I've lived in London for 26 years, 27 years, and I am currently in Venice because I'm part of the exhibition Il Palazzo Encyclopedico at the Venice Biennale.
I'm Vittorino Andreoli. I am a psychiatrist.
Oh wow!
And I am here because I am the psychiatrist of Carlo Zinelli, and I was the discoverer of his ability and his particularly ability to express through colors and through paintings.
What do you feel your relationship is with someone like Zinelli, who we've got in the garden, or many of the artists who are in here, who are not making art in order to make art, they're making it because they got to make? As
an artist, I've been looking at the work around me in my upbringing that I necessarily wouldn't make a distinction between who was making it as an automatic sort of unconscious need and the ones who had a more formed idea about what art could be in a professionalized manner. So I would say that I never made that discrimination. So for me, it's very difficult to sort of, all I see is just people trying to work out a formal solution to being here, you know, to be in the world.
I think it's a natural stage the art world's going through to look at artists who had to make it, to get over the art world's trauma about being overly rational, being overly professional, yes. The art school system, etc., etc. So there's a fascination with, let's say, the outsider artist or the ill artist every now and again to try to understand, really, I mean, the drive that all artists really ultimately have, which is, I mean, you can't get in it as long as we are without having a sort of how could I put this, sort of, I can't stop. That's how people always say, how did you survive all those years and do all, because I did it. Yeah. That's why. So there's that. So right now there's this fascination because that appears now more true, maybe, right? Or there's some sort of thing that people are negotiating with about truth and about the artist's soul and all these issues which were gone for 20 years.
Yes.
I mean, the post-minimalist discussion was not about, do you need to, you have to do it, how do you understand your psyche, all of that. But this is kind of coming back in. Yeah. It's a way of again trying to talk about the sublime always. That's always what it is. It's a way to talk about sublime. It's a way to talk about death, sex.
It's also about trying to establish a better relationship with things that we don't understand. And I think in a sense that also come to terms with the facts of dying.
Oh, the sex and death bit brought you in.
So it's it is that ultimate sort of dilemma and ultimate mystery of how do we approach the lack of understandings that is part of being here. And I think with psychotic art, if you want to call it, or art of the people who have been recognized as being sort of, mentally ill, you get that sort of almost stamp of inevitability about how close that is to the actual thing, because they had no choice in terms of finding a place for themselves or the works that they were making, other than the one that was being being institutionalized, creating these works that were very sort of sort of inexplicably sort of inventive in ways that would never come from a tradition. So there's almost like this idea of making a tradition out of that sheer raw need.
Do you see the same crossover? Can you recognize this kind of compulsive maker?
I'm a compulsive. Yes. I'm a complete.
I resist. I try to sometimes obstacle my compulsion.
I'm total compulsive.
So I mean, does this ring true to you? I mean, does this?
Well,
How do you look at these guys? I mean, do these guys fit into the same pattern?
I'm not in service today. I can make diagnosis.
Believe me, you already have.
Let me say
it's happened.
Let me say one thing that I think is important. We have not to believe that mental patients become very often artists, or they are artists because they are necessarily mental patients. I must tell you that among all the mental people, the mental patients people that try to produce artistic thing, there are only 3, 1, 2, 3 very, very important artists.
Sure.
Number one, Wölfli,
Yeah.
Alois, and Carlo. So I mean, we can say that there is a line, there is a space where there are the art of the mental patients.
But I
I
grew
mean,
up-
excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
There are some artists that, if you go to understand his lifestyle, if autobiography, well, you can understand that he has some trouble. Some trouble, some mental illness means that they are lacking of many things, but
Agreed.
not of everything.
Yes.
So it could be without rationality, without capacity to express verbally, but they have many other possibility
My
that are not disability, but they are advantages.
The
Let-
conditions for the uniqueness of, the rarity, as you were saying, of actually having, in the world of mental illness
Right.
is as exceptional as it is in any other. It's
yes,
not that
exactly.
there you get a different type of conditions
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
those things to emerge in a different
Yeah.
way. So we tend to think that somehow it presents this almost perfect ground for
Yeah.
this bubbling sort of hysteria
Yeah.
to sort of come up with no, I think it's like there are very few things that actually become significant to the
Right.
point of sort of turning into something that it's
exactly.
really, really out of reach from the rest.
Yeah.
But it's no different from what happens out of the mental institution. It's exactly the same.
Exactly. Let me say, I am not interested in art. Let me say,
Yes.
I am a psychiatrist,
Yes.
and I am very much interested in understand what the man is, what the mind is.
How
That
does
is
it
a
work?
fantastic.
Yes.
Now, what I like to say is that now the mental patients that became artists, they have not to be separated
No.
from anything.
No.
How do you relate yourselves to that kind of material? I mean, really going back to the fundamental thing. How do you?
I had a discussion when I came to install my work with the curator here in Venice, that we were talking about Hilma af Klimt's works, and she was saying that she hates her work,
Really?
which I thought was kind of interesting because she recognized that the material that Hilma af Klimt sort of evoked was one of ideological danger in terms of, she was making a comparison between like the sort of Freemason structure of Italian politics, for instance, at the moment, where like Berlusconi is a massive Freemason, and so he's built his sort of political vision is based on a Freemason structure. So his villa in Sardinia is built on a Freemason's plan, like an actual sort of diagram. So so she was associating this kind of source material that she used, or not necessarily about Freemasons, but this sort of spiritualism and all these things, as something that potentially is dangerous and reactionary. And my argument was that when I saw her work for the first time, I never questioned the sort of source that would bring her to try to resolve these formal problems that I believe were the key concerns of hers, rather than actually trying to work out, so what she was making sort of use of, for me, was irrelevant. So in a sense, I see that the danger of that sort of free fall, where actually what you're trying to consider is really creating a formal representation, so that everything becomes sort of everything becomes free, and everything becomes potentially dangerous, and everything becomes political, and everything becomes all the things that in a way we need to establish a rational relationship with. Unfortunately, with art, you can also maintain a position of non-rational relationship, fortunately.
And then you rationalize that non-rationality.
Somehow, yes,
Yeah.
because you still function as a human being on a daily basis, and you try your best to sort of keep an order to these things. But what we call outsider art has almost like an archetypal sort of archetypal relationship with these sensorial things, because you see even the physical qualities of this work is often so incredibly sensual and tactile, and you almost get the sense of like you don't really quite know what these artists, what these people did with these pieces of paper, with this, if you think of like Judith Scott and these binding objects.
Yeah, but you're
like,
a maker
what
like
was
me,
the-
we're sculptors, so when you make things with your hands, you also instantly get into this idea of, there's something so wrong about doing that, like making it,
Yes.
in the world, particularly in this mass-produced, this idea of like slowing it down, this almost Luddite action,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that's almost crazy. People constantly say to me, they kind of associate me because I make things with crazy behavior.
Yes,
Isn't that
absolutely.
interesting?
Yeah.
Why is that?
The rational approach to making art, which
Luna.
is almost like an academic approach to
You wanna
making art,
go.
invites you to almost make you think that you should only make when you're requested to make. So the idea of actually making because you're actually still every day trying to figure out something seems to be sort of almost unacceptable or inappropriate. So the academic approach of making art, which is what a lot of art actually in contemporary terms is doing, almost invites us like, why would you do that every day? Why would you need a massive studio? Why would you have bags of plaster? Why would you have, you should only work when you actually have a project or show or something.
absolutely.
So there is this weird idea that...
this is, I will argue, I think Vittorino agrees with me, but that there's a revolutionary moment whereby these very humble characters who come from unusual, sometimes difficult, you've got personal experience, but difficult situations, who are also very creative and are good, and we're not even talking about what's good and bad, somehow can liberate the wider concept of art making from this over-reliance.
100%. You
Absolutely.
put your finger on it. I agree
Absolutely.
100%. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
really, in a nutshell, what we're talking
Yes,
about.
we are. This is the
Those are
the
the
notch
percent.
of the discussion.